Okay, I think we're live. Um, my goodness, that's my red shirt. Look at that thing on the camera. My goodness. Okay, that is really obnoxiously loud color. It actually looks like normal dark red in real life. But that is, wow, look how red that shirt is. Well, the internet was dead in the whole city here, apparently. I texted our church secretary because I had sent out a link saying we're going to go live here. Um, and it looked like there was no internet until like 2 minutes ago. So I think we're live. It says chat disconnected, unable to connect. Let's see. Test. Let's see if we can test it. Are we here? There's nobody watching. Here. Text Amy Hines. I think we have internet and I'm live.
Send it.
I'm live. It says I live. I'm live. Live. All right.
Done.
So if this is actually working, I'm not completely sure it is. The internet is connected. Let's see. Let's see if I can check my email on here. Let's go over here and check this. Is it checking my email? It is. Okay. For you. I think it's working. I'm texting my brother Richard. So okay. I think we're live. All right. So man, there's nobody watching. That makes me suspicious that it might not be working. I guess we'll see, won't we? So anyway, I don't want to do a whole program if it's not even being recorded and nobody can actually see me. You know what? Maybe I'll record it on my phone too. That way there is at least a video. If yeah. All right. So we'll do that there. How's that? I guess that's a little crooked. Hold on a second. This is very fly by the seat of my pants here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start the live program now, and I'm recording on my phone and on the computer. I think it's live, but there's one person here. Who is that one person who's here? Is it actually working? Is it? Okay. Can anybody see me? Question mark. I'm going to stop my phone. Anybody see me? Who is that? There's one person. There's one person out there in internet land that is on here. Oh, they're gone. They left. Okay. There's one like. How can someone like this without actually watching the live feed? Is that even possible? Okay. I'm not sure what is going on with this. Don't know what the deal is with this. I guess we'll see. Okay, wait a minute. There's two people on here now. There's 26. Okay, so I guess we are live. Sorry about that. I've kind of wasted the first 3 minutes, 41 seconds. Okay, so we had an internet outage here in Kingsport, Tennessee, and there was no internet anywhere. It was citywide, and so I wasn't planning on doing this today, but there's 27 people watching, so I guess that's good. Let's see, is anyone texting me back? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the program I was planning on doing. The program caption, if you can see it there, I titled "The Loss of Community and the Need for Friends." And this is Pastor Patrick Hines. Oh, there's a bunch more people on here now. Okay. Coming to you live from Kingsport in my very, very red shirt. In the real world, this shirt just looks normal red. I don't know if it's the way the sunlight is coming in here, but man, that is really, really red. That's my red shirt. So, okay. The Loss of Community. In Michael Horton's really, really good book called Made in America, The Shaping of American Evangelicalism. Great book. I highly recommend it. Made in America by Michael Horton. The 8th chapter of the book is titled The Loss of Community. And there's a quotation here I wanted to read to you by a fellow named Charles Reich, who is a social commentator. He wrote, America is one vast, terrifying anti-community. Charles Reich, in his celebrated social critique of the 1970s, predicted the coming American Revolution as a reaction to disorder, poverty, private power, unmanaged technology, the decline of democratic involvement in the political process, the meaninglessness of work, the loss of self, and the absence of community. It is hoped that this book has addressed some of these themes with Christian concern. It is that last problem on the list, absence of community, which must now receive our attention. Charles Reich captures what for many of our contemporaries is the status quo. Now listen to this quotation and see if you can identify with this. Quote, the great organizations to which most people give their working and the apartments and suburbs to which they return at night are equally places of loneliness and alienation. And I read a book, and I can't remember what book it was, but it had a lot of cultural statistics in it. And it pointed out, I remember the stat, 49% of Americans today, 49% of Americans today live alone, live by themselves. And that is more than at any other time in the entire history of this country. Almost half of the population lives somewhere in a drywall enclosure, whether it's a big house or a little tiny studio apartment or whatever. They live by themselves. They don't live with anyone. And so they're alone. And man was created to be a communal being, to be a social being, to have contact with other people. And that's why Charles Reich, when I read this book a long time ago, I kind of felt the sting of this a little bit more because I was a computer programmer working at a very large corporation, and I knew the guys and the people that I worked with, but I really didn't know my neighbors. I didn't know the people in the apartments next to us. I didn't know hardly anybody. And so, yeah, the place that I gave my working and the apartments and then the suburbs to which I returned at night, they were equally places of loneliness and alienation. Modern living has obliterated place, locality, and neighborhood and given us the anonymous separateness of our existence. The family, the most basic social system, has been ruthlessly stripped to its functional essentials. Now, what do you think he means by that? The family, the most basic social system, has been ruthlessly stripped to its functional essentials, meaning we're all pulled apart all the time. It's rare, unless you're intentional about it, your family is rarely in the same room together. Everyone's gone. Everyone's doing stuff. Everyone's participating in other activities. We just don't spend a whole lot of time together. And in fact, if families do spend lots of time together, if people do spend lots of time together in a home, they almost are made to feel guilty about it. Like you're missing out on all these other activities. I've shared this with people in the past, but I played sports growing up, and I was involved in music growing up, and I played soccer, and I played football, and I played basketball, and I was involved in all kinds of stuff like that, all sorts of things like that. My favorite memories, my favorite memories in my entire life, before I got married, are of playing a card game called Rook with my mom and my dad and my sister. Those are my fondest memories. I enjoyed that more than football. I enjoyed that more than soccer. I enjoyed that more than basketball. I enjoyed that more than I did taekwondo for a while when I was young. And I enjoyed that more than the music, more than the piano stuff that I was involved in. I enjoyed just being part of my family when the whole family was together doing something together. Those are my fondest memories. I never felt better and felt more a part of something than when we sat down and played cards together as a family. And the thing is, I hate cards. To this day, I cannot stand cards. I don't like poker. I don't like gin. I don't even remember how to play Rook. I just remember you would bid on tricks. It was kind of like euchre, I think, but I don't remember how to play euchre either. I don't like cards. But those are my fondest childhood memories, playing cards with my mom and my dad and my sister. And my second favorite memories were of playing chess with my dad in the basement on his Vietnam chest that had all his war and army stuff in it, and all his cool little trinkets that he got in Vietnam. It was a big steel box that was just the right height to put a chair on either side, and we would sit in the basement, and he would play records for me, and he would play every kind of music that you can imagine. He would play for me. He played Scott Joplin ragtime music for me. He played Frederick Chopin. He played the Beatles. He played Queen. He played Beethoven symphonies and piano concertos, and he played George Gershwin, Porgy and Bess, and Rhapsody in Blue, and American in Paris. And he played Simon and Garfunkel, and played folk music, and Barbra Streisand, and Judy Collins, and all the rest of them. I mean, just played every kind of music, and we would sit down there and play chess. And we did that a couple nights a week until I started beating him. And then we never played chess again. After I was about 13, I beat him once when I was 13. And then he beat me every game after that for the next few months. And then I beat him a couple times in a row when I was 14, and we never played chess again after that. My fondest memories of my life before marriage was playing cards with my whole family and playing chess with my dad and talking. Was football fun? Sure. Basketball, was that fun? Actually, not really. I didn't like basketball. I like basketball. I just didn't like playing at the school I went to. It was terrible. Did I enjoy soccer? A little bit. My fondest memories were the people, especially my family. That was the thing I loved more than anything. But I just loved to be when we were all together. My dad, at one point, he, God bless him, he felt like we weren't spending enough time together as a family. So one night a week, we would actually just sit down, and no TV, no movies or anything, or no music. And we would just sit in the same room and hang out together and tell stories and talk about what was going on lately and what we've been doing lately. I enjoyed those times too. Those are my fondest memories. But people were designed by God to have friends, to be with people. So many people today are just so alienated from each other. They just don't seem to have any friends. They don't seem to have anybody that they regularly spend time with, and they don't seem to have much interest in any sense of community. Now, one of the podcasts that I listen to that I actually recommend, I think it's a pretty good podcast, is The World and Everything in It. And there's a couple of other podcasts that are associated with it that I've subscribed to those too, and we'll listen to those on the weekend. And they're not very long, like a half hour or so, and you get the news and things like that. They did a special recently on one of these where they covered this issue of the metaverse, where you can have a little avatar and people go to these meetups, and they were talking about this metaverse church where you can, like, you attend the church online as a little dude. Like, I've never seen this. I've not seen videos of it. I don't know what it really looks like or anything, but you have a little thing that represents you, and you can make it look like you. You can make it look like an animal if you want. You can make it look like, I guess, anything that your heart desires. People make themselves look like animals, or they make themselves look a little bit like they actually look in real life. But the interviews that were done and some of the analysis that was done in that podcast talking about the metaverse was really depressing, because they described it. The people they talked to, that they kind of live their non-working hours in virtual reality, they've kind of given up on real life. That's how they described them. They're, as people who have given up on the real world. And in fact, there's a little acronym that they use, IRL. In the metaverse, where these people get together in these gatherings, whatever you want to call them, they talk about what they're doing IRL, and IRL stands for in real life. So at least they recognize this is not real life. We're just, we can talk to each other. We can't really see each other, but there's a lot of really, really naughty, bad, horrible stuff that goes on in these virtual meetups that people have. But there's churches that this is how they meet and hang out and stuff like that. And it almost sounded like they were trying to do a baptism, um, by the person, the pastor instructing someone, now go get in water or something. And I was like, are you serious? Like, this is not IRL. This is not in real life. But Charles Reich wrote that paragraph I just read in I forget what year it was. It was shortly after the 70s, as I recall. Charles Reich. Let's see, chapter 8 footnotes here. 1971. Okay, so he wrote that in 1971. I mean, the technology for this kind of the stuff I'm describing didn't even exist back then, and it certainly wasn't available to the masses if it was in its infancy. But the point I'm trying to make here, and the thing I want us to reflect on a little bit, is we live in a world that is becoming more and more um, it's becoming more and more a victim of mismanaged technology, where the technology is great on these gadgets and stuff like that. I mean, I'm using a bunch of technology right now, stuff I would never have dreamed I would do 20 years ago. I mean, the idea of live streaming, and anyone on this planet that has an internet connection could click on the link and see me here in Kingsport, Tennessee. Of course, 20 years ago, I'd never even heard of Kingsport, Tennessee, where I live now. But we have a lot of mismanaged technology. We have a lot of alienation. People are from a lot of brokenness in families, and because of that, there's a lot of hostility towards the idea of family. A lot of young people today are kind of like, they almost feel guilty if they want to get married and have kids and try to have a family, as if that's somehow beneath the modern person. But the thing is, we were designed for that. We were designed by God for that sort of thing. Okay, listen to what Charles Wright goes on to say here. The family, the most basic social system, I know I already read it, I just want to read it again, has been ruthlessly stripped to its functional essentials. I think what he means is, yeah, there's a drywall enclosure I go to get food and stuff, but while I'm in there, I just hook back into the internet and watch YouTube videos, and then eventually go to sleep and go back to work. And I don't have any human contact with anybody. I just kind of live in my virtual world, and the family, yeah, mom and dad are there. And I say hi to them, and how was your day? Fine. And we don't have deep conversations about anything. Yeah, it's been ruthlessly stripped to its functional essentials, meaning there's not a circle of warmth there. It's not something people enjoy being part of. And I'll tell you, the TV shows that I grew up with lent themselves to that kind of alienation. I mean, I remember when the TV show Married with Children came out, and that made me uncomfortable, because the shows I watched before that, the Brady Bunch and the Cosby Show, at least you had husband and wife that loved each other, and kids that were, they may have some issues, but they were relatively respectful. I think of Leave It to Beaver and things like that. Ward was very interested in Beaver's development as a moral young man. Whereas Al Bundy, or whatever the guy's name was, and Married with Children, it was terrible. It was awful. The things they said and talked about, I mean, it just made a mockery of marriage and the family, and people kind of went along with all of that. And it's offensive. It's terrible. Listen to this. Friendship has been coated over with a layer of impenetrable artificiality as men strive to live roles designed for them. Yeah, friendship is just not what it was long ago. It's been coated over with a layer of artificiality, impenetrable artificiality. I play the role that has been designed by others for me. I'll play the role that people think I'm supposed to play, rather than really trying to be myself and be comfortable in my own skin. He goes on here: protocol, competition, hostility, and fear have replaced the warmth of the circle of affection which might sustain man against a hostile universe. And so, yeah, protocol and competition, people can be very competitive with one another rather than really being humble and really being for each other. They become competitive with each other and hostile to one another. It seems that the goal is to best everyone around you rather than really to try to understand who they are and to love them and to be interested in them. And we're all wired differently. But one of my children, who's 21 now, this little guy, you could tell that in his heart, he just wanted to be social and wanted to have friends. I was always amazed when he would come back from some activity where he was with a bunch of kids. He knew all their names. He knew how many siblings they had and their siblings' ages and things like that. And I used to watch him from a distance and just watch him kind of bounce around people. And he would ask them questions and be, looking right at them. And um, he just wanted to know people. He wanted to be close to people. He wanted to have friends. And I think there's a little bit of that in every one of us. Every one of us wants to engage with people and not feel like people are hostile to us, and we don't want to feel like we're competing with them and try to show, well, I'm better than you at this, or I can do this and or I've done this and done that, rather than having a circle of affection which might sustain man against a hostile universe. And whoever is out there listening, that's really what the Church of Jesus Christ is supposed to do. It should be that place where there's a circle of affection, where there's people there who aren't going to hurt you, people there who are fellow believers, who want the same things. They want to live a godly life. They want to, if they're married, they want to, be a good wife or a good husband. They um, want all their children to know Christ. They want people to rejoice with. They want people to weep with. That's one thing I've been listening to. Renewing Your Mind. Guy Waters did a teaching series on facing the last enemy, on death, dealing with death, and just talking about the how do you deal with death? How do you deal with hardship and dying and things like that? And Dr. Waters made a point that I'd never actually considered before. Romans chapter 12 issues it as an imperative. It is a command from God to weep with those who weep. But it's very hard to weep with those who weep if you don't know them, if you're not close to them at all. I mean, we all have a sense of human sympathy, and there's things that can cause us to get teary eyed. But if you know someone or are with someone who goes through a terrible loss or really bad news, and you can weep with them and you can feel their sadness with them, that's hard to do because we want to avoid pain. Nobody wants to. I guess I shouldn't. I don't want to weep and feel terrible unless it's something directly related to me. But we're commanded in Scripture to weep with those who weep, and we're commanded in Scripture by the Holy Spirit to rejoice with those who rejoice. That's what the church is all about. The church should have that circle of affection, that warm circle of affection that will sustain us against a universe that's otherwise hostile. Excuse me. When the hostility comes from inside the church, that's what's really sad, and that's when things are really hard. But you slog through even that, and you press on through that. Michael Horton says here, the roots of alienation, loneliness, and the loss of community can be discovered in much of our own evangelical history. It is a grave problem in society and no less troubling in the churches. Perhaps by gaining a better grasp on the problem, we can be better equipped to transform our introverted, isolated contemporaries with the communion of the saints. I mean, you hear people, are you an extrovert or an introvert? Almost everybody today is, I'm an introvert. In fact, someone at church posted a meme a long time ago when I was on Facebook, and it said, "Introverts of the world unite separately." And I thought that was kind of funny because introverts don't want to unite because they're not extroverts; they're introverts, meaning they're kind of turned in on themselves and they just kind of prefer to be by themselves. And I've said many times to the guys here, a church that the majority of men are cavemen by nature. I just want to be in a cave. I mean, guys even have that's even a cultural phenomenon, the man cave. In other words, it's a place in my house or nearby where I can be all by myself and just have nobody bother me and just do whatever. I guess stare into your navel and contemplate the lint or something. But man caves are not healthy. And Proverbs 18, verse 1 says, a man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. He rages against all wise judgment. We really do need friends. Friendship is missing today. And that's what, and the family is missing today. I remember there was an ad that was put out by Focus on the Family years ago. And they said, what's missing from your family? Your family? And just pointing out, everybody's gone. You come home, everybody's gone. Everyone's got their stuff that they're doing. And it's almost like, well, if you do stuff together, then you're going to miss out on all these extracurricular activities. But what we're really longing for is a sense of belonging to people, being close to people, having friends. Says Horton here, seeking freedom from traditional norms in favor of self-expression, popular culture in the 1960s issued its own Declaration of Independence. This sent American culture into the me decade of the 70s, which has become the me decades. It's really been kind of like that ever since. I gotta be me. I mean, that was an expression that was popular when I was growing up in the 1980s. I gotta be me. Nevertheless, I think the problem is much more complicated than this. To be sure, the 1960s represented a turning point. Yet, rather than revolution, I'm tempted to call it a renewal. The drive for autonomy, self-assertion, and independence has reasserted itself through our nation's history. The revivals of the last century, inaugurated with the Second Great Awakening, enabled Jacksonian democracy to elect not only its rulers, but also its God and its creed. Previously, Christians were organized into a holy commonwealth. Man, said the Puritans, is a sociable creature. He is made for society. They added, that saying, every man for himself and God for us all, is devilish. Every man for himself is devilish. Our Puritan forefathers said that. It says even with regard to marriage in 1 Corinthians, let me see if I can find the passage here, that man is not independent of the woman. Okay, let's see, woman independent. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 11, or verse 1 Corinthians 11, verse 11. However, in the Lord, neither is woman independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. And so often you'll hear people brag or even boast that, yeah, we're raising this child, or I have this child, this son or daughter. They're very independent. We're not supposed to be independent. We're supposed to depend on one another. And the fact is, if we are independent, we don't do very well, because the fact is we're hardwired to need people. We're hardwired to need companionship. In fact, I was just reading today, in Malachi chapter 2, we have Malachi rebuking the people of Israel there, God rebuking them for treacherously dealing with their wives. Now, they probably, many of them were committing adultery against their wife, but it could just be not being a good husband too. It says in Malachi 2:14, yet you say, for what reason? Because the Lord has been a witness between you and the wife of your youth, with whom you have dealt treacherously. Yet she is your companion and your wife by covenant. In other words, that marriage was so that you could have a companion. So you could have a companion and be close to someone and them really know you, and have someone you don't hide from, someone that really knows and understands you and is always with you. Even when you suffer and go through terrible trials, you're still close and you still love each other, and you take each other by the hand and pray. So I think that dealing treacherously there, when it says you've dealt treacherously with your wife, your companion there, I don't think it necessarily only means adultery. It probably just means men who stop pursuing their wife. and they don't work on their marriage anymore, and they just let it get dull and gray and kind of fall apart. So that's something else there that we need to consider. Gradually, the idea of a covenant community gave way to a vision of collected individuals. Isn't that an insightful sentence? A covenant community gave way to a vision of collected individuals. I think that's one of the reasons there's so much transience in churches. And that's been something I've seen my entire life. My entire life, there are always people coming in and out of local churches. There's always there's a too quick of a willingness to turn your back on your church family. I'm very thankful to God. My parents taught me good churchmanship growing up. They're still members of the same church. They've been members of that church for 41 years now. Faith was not so much a mutual conviction regarding creedal statements and a consequent common experience, but an individual experience. More to the point, a decision which each person could understand in his own way. Theology aside, sects emerged throughout the last century. Each appealed to the individualistic impulses of the Romantic age. During this period, the poet Walt Whitman exalted, "Divine am I inside and out, and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. I dote on myself. There is that lot of me, and all so luscious. Each moment and whatever happens thrills me with joy." Yeah, that's a poem he wrote called "Song of Myself." I mean, that's everything wrong with the world right there. Divine am I inside and out? No, it should say depraved am I inside and out. In need of redemption by Christ inside and out. And I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. No, I make sinful whatever I touch. I dote on myself. I mean, you could convert this to Christian terminology. I loathe myself, like Job said. There is that lot of me and all so luscious. No, there is a lot of me and it's not luscious. It's evil, sinful. Each moment and whatever happens thrills me with joy. Now, we can have joy in the midst of this difficult life of dealing with the consequences of sin. But what a horrible poem. Says Horton here. The Puritan was concerned that even his calling served the neighborhood or commonwealth rather than himself. He hardly doted on himself. Even religious activities were not to be done from selfish motives. God has justified him, having punished Christ in his place. Acceptance had been freely given, not achieved. Therefore, even developing one's personal relationship with Christ at the expense of the community was viewed as antisocial and consequently anti-Christian behavior. So I'm not supposed to just go off and study constantly all by myself. I'm supposed to be part of the local fellowship of God's people. One no longer had to work for his own salvation, for instance, by helping others, so he could give himself to the good of others from unselfish motives. Puritan William Gurnall insisted that the one who was truly pious did others more good in this world than himself in the next. Isn't that perfect? He did others more good in this world than himself in the next. One's energies were not to be spent hoping to earn God's favor. If salvation were by grace alone, religious piety and morality would have to be judged in terms of how they served God and neighbor in this life, not oneself in the next. Said a Puritan divine, Thomas Goodwin, to be proficient in holy duties is indeed more sweet to a man's own self, but to be proficient in our calling is more profitable to others, to the church, the commonwealth, or the family, and so may glorify God more. Hear what they're really pointing out here? Our relationships with other images of God is the primary arena of our sanctification. Now, I'm all for studying the Word of God and memorizing the Word of God and having a close personal walk with Christ. But the primary way that that's manifested is in my marriage, and it is with my relationship to my children and in the people that know me. Listen to Goodwin again. He's exactly right. To be proficient in holy duties like prayer, Bible reading, church attendance, very important stuff, is indeed more sweet to a man's own self, but to be proficient in our calling, that means our job, whatever we do in the service of our neighbor, our job in society, to be proficient in our calling or job is more profitable to others, to the church, the commonwealth, or the family, and so may glorify God more. Reading the Bible and praying on company time is selfish. One must never place his own spiritual well-being above that of the community. Individualism has robbed many Christians of the joy of what the Apostles' Creed calls the communion of the saints. The communion of the saints. You know, we have a whole chapter called Of the Communion of the Saints in the Westminster Confession. We believe in that precious doctrine, that we have communion in one another's gifts, and that there is a mystical body of Christ that we're part of. Martin Marty fears that evangelicals threw off old world creeds just to write, quote, creeds and myths that defend rugged individualism and play down the community of the whole people of God, end quote. We referred to one transcendentalist, the poet Walt Whitman. Another transcendentalist turned process philosopher, Alfred North Whitehead, demonstrates the individualistic orientation of American religion in general. According to Martin Marty, Alfred North Whitehead said that religion is what a person does with his solitariness. That is just the opposite of the truth. They think religion is you on Walden Pond contemplating the breeze blowing across the water and becoming one with nature or something like that. That's not it. True piety is friendship with other people who are often really different from you and will have quirks and things about them that get on your nerves. In biblical religion, Martin Marty wrote, quote, it has to do with what he does with community. American religion made Whitehead's definition understandable and placed the biblical definition almost beyond reach, end quote. Y'all ever feel that way? That you may actually end your days having never felt like you were really part of anything. Having never felt like you really had true friends. Do you ever feel that? The sense of belonging, the sense of community, the sense of friendship. It just eludes you. It's like the carrot in front of the donkey. No matter how fast he goes, it's always out of reach. He can get so close to it, but he can't grab it. He can never get it. That's the way it is with intimacy and marriage too. So many people. It's like a sense of belonging and warmth and friendship that stands its ground regardless of the trials. It's like it's almost beyond reach, as the historian Martin Marty wrote there. It's a definition. The biblical definition is just beyond reach. You just can't get to it. He wrote this, the same historian wrote, quote, little religious value is associated in historic Christianity with the idea of the individual off by him or herself, competing against all others, often in the name of God. The dean of Harvard Divinity School, Christopher Stendhal, has effectively argued that American Christians have often twisted biblical concerns. Their kind of salvation talk is egocentric. What are you doing for me, God? Who cares what happens to the larger community? Being rescued is more important than building the created world or serving others, end quote. Now, so true. So true. So what's the main point of all my blather here? I'd like to read more of this chapter, but we're running out of time. I want to make my point here. I'm a caveman by nature. I just want to be by myself a lot, and that's not healthy. That's a tendency that I've had to fight against for the better part of my adult life. And when things are rough and things are hard, I often don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want any contact with other human beings. And that's not good. That's not healthy, because not only is that not giving the people at my church an opportunity to weep with someone, and to rejoice with them too. It's selfish. It's selfish. You know, there are so many people that I think they really believe in their hearts that nobody really cares about them. They really think nobody loves them. I used to tell myself that all the time. When I was young, I told myself, there's no one that really cares about me. There's no one that really loves me. And that's just a lie. At no point in my life has that ever been true. There have always been people that have loved me. There's always been people that were there for me, that really cared about me. And so it's one of the lies that I told myself. I catch myself still telling myself that at times. And you know what that is? That's just pure old fashioned selfishness. I don't do well if I'm isolated from people. If I spend lots and lots of time alone, that is not good for me. But there's a tendency to do that because being around people is harder. You got to listen. It takes more energy to be around people. And that's what we have to work on, because the places where we give our working hours and then the places where we return at night very often are places of equal loneliness and alienation. People are lonely today. And as I said at the beginning, I can't recall where that I read that statistic, but it might have been on a news podcast. More people live alone in America than at any other time in the entire history of this country. It's like 49%. Almost half of America's population lives alone. And there's nothing inherently wrong with living by yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But why is that number so high? And after the coronavirus thing happened and churches were closed for such a long time, the statistics are 20% of churchgoers are staying home now. And I just think, I guess they just didn't really value being around other Christians. They just didn't really value that. And we should value it. And we should be for one another. And we should enjoy those times of being able to be by each other. And I found myself, even as a pastor, I wonder if I walk up to someone and, hey, how's it going? Is that going to annoy them? And I'm trying to train myself to have the mentality, it doesn't matter if it annoys them. They need someone to say hi to them. They need someone to talk to. We all do. And so while it's harder to live in community and it's harder, I just think back on, my family growing up was anything but perfect. My fondest memories, the things, the memories that I have that I treasure the most to this day. I'm getting close to 50 years old. I'm 48. The things I remember that before I got married that were the best days of my entire life were the times that it was my mom, my dad, and my sister and me playing rook around the kitchen table. And I look back and think I didn't really even enjoy the card game that much. There was just something about sitting down with the whole family when I was a little kid and being part of that. And there have been a few moments that I have felt a sense of belonging since then, but I never felt a sense of belonging really outside of my family, my immediate family like that, until I became a Christian and really felt a sense of these are my brothers, the guys I met, the Christian men that I met when I was in college that were part of my wedding, and my roommates, and just a lot of great guys I met at the church I went to. And since then, the precious, wonderful people that I've known in churches have been so important in my life, and have had such a huge, good impact on my life. And there's been a lot of very hard things that have happened along the way too. A lot of heartache along the way. A lot of things that have been very hard to process along the way as well. But I just want to encourage everyone that there's been a loss of community. And the solution to that is not to have a zillion programs in churches. The solution to that is to simply be deliberate about making friends. When I was a teenager, when I was in high school, I used to tell my mother, Mom, I just don't feel like I have any friends. I don't think I really have any friends. And my mom would say, Patrick, to have a friend, you have to be a friend. And she really laid into me once when I was a junior in high school. She said, Patrick, you feel like that because you make no effort. You don't call anybody. You expect everyone to come to you, and you won't put yourself out there at all. And she also said to me, and I bet you many of them feel exactly the same way you do. Looking back on that, it's like when I was 16, 17, it's like, wow, I didn't realize my mom was so smart. She was right. So I actually took the time to, call people. Hey, let's go hang out. Let's go do something. And then I had friends, for the rest of high school. It's kind of like you just need one semi-intelligent adult that cares about you to give you good advice and good counsel. But even that was a result of my relationship with my mother and her help and her wisdom that she gave to me, and willing to rebuke me and correct me. But we could do that because I was very, very, very close. Still am very close to my mother and to my father. Communities very much lacking today. People are alienated from each other. There's a very strange phenomenon I've seen on YouTube. People are posting videos all the time now. Videos where they just kind of pour their heart out saying, I'm 31 years old and I have no friends. I'm 25 years old. I have no friends. I'm 40 years old. I have no friends. And I've watched a couple of these. They are absolutely heartbreaking to watch. And people saying, yeah, I have no human beings in my life that I'm close to. None. And I just think, wow, as much as at times I just want to be by myself, I know there is an unhealthy tendency to extend that way too long, to be alone for way too long, and that I need to be around people, and I need to have guys here at church that I know that I can talk to. And the thing is, I know that a lot of them need to be able to talk to me too. And so while it's harder to have community and it's harder to put forth that effort, we all need it. Man was designed for this. Man was designed for friendship. And I love that quotation from Charles Reich's book, The Greening of America, that Horton quotes there. You know, man needs that circle of warmth and affection that would sustain him against the hostile universe. It's very hard. It doesn't matter how good you are at the things that you do, whether it's music or sports or ballet or art or whatever, no matter how good you are at it, without people to share that with, what good is it? There's that movie that came out in the 90s, I think it was Bodyguard, with Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner plays the bodyguard, and it was a decent movie. It was a popular movie. There was a song that Whitney Houston sang, and her life was a really sad story too. I just hated that she died of a drug overdose, and that was so sad. Whitney Houston had the most incredible voice. In fact, I cannot listen to her sing the national anthem as she did during the Gulf War without getting all emotional. It was so incredible. Her voice was absolutely amazing. But there was a song that was on the soundtrack of Bodyguard, that movie. I want to run to you. One of the lines from that, as I recall, is, "What's the sense of working hard to find your dreams without someone to share it with? Tell me, what does it mean?" And she's right. She's right. Those lyrics are right. And I think, what if I accomplished every goal I ever had in life, but I didn't have Amy, didn't have my wife? What if I did everything I ever wanted and accomplished all my goals and achieved everything I ever put my mind to as far as, the world is concerned, but I didn't have my children or I didn't have my friends at church? Man was made to rejoice with people and also to weep with people. Okay, I just wanted to talk about that. There's been a loss of community in our time, and we all need it. And we all need to make the effort to come out of the cave and talk to people and be someone's friend, because I guarantee you, you're surrounded by lonely people. Thanks for watching or for listening.